Looks like we're recording. So I'm tracking that it is 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. We have everybody present except for Ms. Gracie, so we'll make that as a note. Moving down the agenda, we are going to start here with citizen comment period. Is there any citizens that want to make a comment?
And I don't know if you want me to do the guns part two right now. Or
Wait until that.
So I had two things I wanted to say now. One is I've given you all, and it's up on the library bulletin board, but I'm on the board of the Catherine Porter House, and we just want to invite everybody in the entire community, but I thought especially you guys, to come out and see our next writer. It'll be next Friday on the 17th. At 7:30 at 508 West 7th Street. And her name is Jane Wong, and she's won all kinds of amazing awards. She's a visual artist as well as a poet, and she has a memoir coming out. And and anyway, so invite everybody. It's free to the public, and it's one of those great things we do in Kyle that a lot of people don't realize is free. And just come out. They do sell books, usually the university bookstore there, but you don't have to buy one. You can just come and soak in the wonderful environment. And a lot of students go and they ask wonderful questions, and you learn so much from these authors. So I just wanted to tell you all that. And then a wonderful analogy came to me the other day that I wanted to share to you guys, just as library board members, that one of the roles, I've been kind of lecturing on, I apologize for that, but I was thinking about docents of museums, and I was thinking that you're kind of like a docent or a guide to the library out in the community. I don't mean physically coming in and showing people around, but I just wanted to kind of challenge you to put on that hat when you're out in the community and talk about everything in the library. Maybe come and find what you like the most about the library and talk about that to people, specifics, whatever your favorite section is, the free magazines in the lobby, the bulletin board, certain programs or whatever. I just want to encourage you to think of yourself like that. Thank you.
Thank you. And hearing no other comments, we'll move on to consent items, the review and consideration of the January 12th, 2023 board meeting minutes. If you don't mind, take a minute to review them. You've had a chance to review. Is there any requested changes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? This motion is a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And before you get to say this to begin, Jessica, I'm going to sign these right now.
Mary, did you say?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And is this for you, Colleen, the signed copies?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to new business. Item 1, consideration and possible action to review proposed changes to interlibrary loans policy. Actually, if you guys don't mind, we'll skip to item 2 real fast. It might be easier from a logical standpoint. Consideration and possible action to improve the process for reviewing and editing library policies. So I know on earlier this week, Colleen and I had talked about how we want to make this actually function. I know we talked last meeting about possible changes that might be occurring to city ordinances and how that would change our approval processes, what we can and can't usually do. So knowing that as of right now, city ordinance say that all changes have to go to council, but that may or may not change at some point in the future. We thought it'd be easiest if we started to draft up our proposed changes internally for actual policies and not ordinances. Because regardless of if we have to send it to council or we approve it ourselves internally here, we gotta know what we want to change. And so structurally, we wanted to have an aggressive pace of once a month, every meeting, we have a new policy that we're reviewing, discussing, approving the draft amounts or changes to. And that way we can kind of try to get through everything within the year. From a process standpoint, we thought it would be very difficult to amend by committee, and thought it'd be easier if we got feedback from Colleen and her staff on changes or recommendations that we would then look at what those kind of red lines were, and as a group give any kind of feedback as appropriate. That way there was some stakeholder and personnel who knew the ins and outs of what the policy was in practice, how it needed to change, that kind of thing, versus us as outsiders saying what may or may not actually be practically or otherwise possible. Did I summarize that well? So unless you want to add in there?
Mhm. And yes, and Spencer, I actually wonder if we could move up continued business number 1 to answer the potential questions of what's going on with the changes to the city ordinances, which we talked about last time. That might help fill that. Is that okay if I?
Yes, and then Jessica, for your sanity, I will circle back to our action items, what we're doing with every one of these items on the agenda, just to make sure we can keep it all straight.
I'm with us so far.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So basically, the process of working on the city ordinance change that we talked about, which is putting the library board under all the other boards, which is technically where it should be, because the city kind of operates as if it is, but there's just a slight technicality that it's under a different article, as we talked about before. It's in process, and the city secretary and the assistant city manager and I worked on it. And I was told that I was way too ambitious, thinking it would be ready by this meeting, because it has to be reviewed by the city attorney, and it's kind of a big, we're not changing a lot, but there's, because we want to do it well and not have to come back to it, they encouraged me to take a little more time, let you guys know it's going to take a little more time, and then start working on one of our policies, just to keep that forward motion. Because regardless, we want to make sure our policies are in a good place.
Cool. Any other discussion on continued business item 1? Hearing none, I'm going to circle back up to new business items. To close the loop on item 2 of approval of the process for reviewing and policies, is there any other discussion or concern about that as our process where Colleen consults with her staff, brings proposed changes for whatever policy is most pertinent at that time, get that stakeholder feedback. We can then review it, provide any other guidance or thoughts, and then we'll generally just table the draft policies until whatever happens with city ordinances gets resolved.
I think it's a reasonable process. The only question I have is, would Colleen and staff, let's say, come forward with a first procedure policy next month? Will that information be sent to us as board members like a week in advance? And is the expectation for us to come in with our potential edit comments by the meeting, or how would that work, just so we know the expectation?
That's a great question.
I think that's what we were going to kind of try to figure out today. I brought forward a policy that I thought we could try to work on and see how, I took a slightly simple one, but then as I dug in, it's a little more complicated than I thought. So I feel like us just trying the process together might give us a better idea of a path forward for setting those expectations of what is reasonable to do within the month and what we should come back with and that kind of thing. So I have, I actually chose our interlibrary loan policy because actually, truth be told, I could not find one. And it doesn't mean that we don't have something that we follow, but I couldn't find one that was written. And so I just took a stab at sort of drafting something that states what we do currently. And then I also provided us with the Texas State Library and Archives Commission. We do interlibrary loan through this program, through our accreditation, and this is the expectations that the state gives us in order to participate in this. This is what we have to follow. I also gave us, this is why I was like, oh, this is a lot. In this, they refer to the American Library Association code that we also follow. So, which is the second one. So, I did a quick review of these to determine the big things that I can see that we may not have in this simple sort of what we live. I just kind of scripted out what we do currently. So I can already see just from having looked at these a little bit, things that need to be added to this to get it in compliance. But so I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure what the process. I can share with you or if you want to take a little time, look at. I'm not sure how we want to go about it.
Yeah, and one of the topics that we discussed, I want to share with you guys as well, is that I want to understand as we're going through this process, what are the friction points? So 'cause I feel like this is the first policy that we're reviewing. We're not going to be easy breezy through the part here. So let's find out what's working, what's not working, and incorporate that into the process steps next.
And for any of you who, I can just sort of give an overview of what interlibrary loan is, because I know that's kind of like very library jargony. And so it's obvious, it's pretty obvious from the term, but basically this, because we are accredited by the state, which we have to go through an annual review every year and pass, basically, there are many perks and benefits to being an accredited library in the state of Texas. And one of them is interlibrary loan. We get to participate in interlibrary loan, which means that our library can request materials from any library that's accredited that participates in the program in the state of Texas. Actually, it's actually beyond the state of Texas. It's pretty much in the country because we use OCLC, which is the National Interlibrary Loan Interface database. And so, you know, it's a nice, robust and really great perk that we offer our patrons. Particularly in the area of materials that one of our patrons may want, but there isn't a huge need in our particular community, but, you know, they want the book or they want the resource. And so it doesn't seem like it would be the best use of our funds to buy it because it may not be something that other people would use, but we are able to leverage the resources in the whole country, really. And then the other thing that the state and the American Library Association encourage or actually require us to do is to have a policy of our own. So we do have some parameters that we can limit. For example, how long you've been a card holder at that particular library, age, you know, there's just different things. You also, we have actually, in Kyle, we actually pass on part of the postage to our patrons. That is something that is not required. Not every library does it. We aren't allowed to charge other libraries, but we are allowed to pass on the cost of postage based on the library rate in the US Post Office. We do also get a grant from the Texas State Library Commission that offsets the cost of our postage. And that is one thing that I know not every library charges because of the grant. But here at Kyle, we do. So that is something that, is, because it's a financial thing, we would have to probably go to city council, but it is something that could be something we consider removing or not. It is within our rights to charge that. Trying to think of anything else.
Are the parameters just based on the library to the patron, whoever is asking for the resource? Or are there also parameters from library to library as to whether if the library came in and wanted to use you as a resource and get whatever, the book or something, that you have the ability to say no because.
Right, and that's something that I think could be fleshed out in our policy. Yes, we
so it's
do
both
have,
ways.
yes, we do have, the way that the system works is the database kind of like sends out what the request is, and then it's like, it has a string of libraries. It like goes and it says, you can say yes or no, and if you get to the end of the string of all the libraries that have it, then you can request again, or you just tell the patron nobody's wanting to lend it. And typically, part of the policies I've seen, most often it's, very new items, delicate or rare items, certain types of more expensive materials, that kind of thing. You can limit, you can set limits. It is within the library's jurisdiction. And that's kind of all spelled out in these things. Honestly, if I were to say what I would love the board's help in this one, because I haven't actually written a policy like this before. I've always inherited a policy. I wouldn't mind, as I dug around and tried to make sure we were following, because I knew that the state had requirements that we had to fulfill in order to be participating. So when I dug in and saw that, oh yeah, not just the state, the American Library, so like, oh boy, we better make sure, when we're redoing this, let's make sure we're, yes. So what I think could be helpful is having a bunch of set of eyes, and I don't know if we could divvy it up or whatever, how we want to do it, to make sure that we're not missing anything. And that if we were to determine parameters that we wanted to put, to make sure they're in there. And also talk about, the postage and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that would be helpful to me, because I don't know, I think sometimes things like this can be hard to interpret, and I think having your help and another set of eyes and stuff would make me feel like we were doing our due diligence to make sure it's, we're covering everything.
It's really helpful to me to hear her perspective as the library director, like framing this work and reviewing these documents before I look at them. So as we're kind of like thinking about our processes moving forward, I wonder, I know I like the idea of just like one policy per meeting, but maybe if we could receive a policy, kind of have a little orientation to what this is about and how we might be most helpful, and then have, time before the next meeting to review, do our homework, and then come back, make some decisions, and maybe get oriented to a new policy. Maybe, I don't know, just kind of throwing that out there, just because that was really helpful to me. And I know I'm going to be able to do a better job like talking about this and thinking about this than I would if I had just gone into it, like not knowing what your framework or the library's history or anything like that was, like with this policy.
I agree. And so then like logistically, I would imagine there'd be some policies that are easier than others, such as your example of if policies exist.
Right.
It's easier to just tweak a few things versus whole cloth create one. So if the group is comfortable with it, maybe we take this meeting right now to just talk out some of the ideas that we have, with the objective of we have action items on. If you don't want to draft it yourself or have time or staff resources available, so don't want to put a burden on the staff either. One of us volunteering to just draft up something real quick based off the ideas, bring that back for a more thorough review next meeting. And that's part of the agenda, while the second half of it is we discuss the new, whichever one we're going to go to next. For the, is this April meeting? Is that
Or March? No.
March? Whatever month that we're in.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure. I didn't follow
Sure.
the first part that you said about process. If you could repeat that, I didn't quite follow who was going to do the first part. I need a little bit.
Step one right now, discuss some more ideas on this topic.
On this one.
On this one.
Okay, got it.
Step two, and I'll just volunteer for it. I don't mind typing up a draft version of the policy to send out to the group. That way, next meeting in March, we've all had a chance to see it and we can discuss, does it work for you? Did I miss something glaring? But then also internally, we can see, did I miss some kind of adherence to a policy here? Kind of QA review it. And that way, in March, we're discussing really kind of final tweaks to this library loan policy as the first part of the agenda. And the second part of the agenda would be you calling presenting the next policy and kind of recycle that process.
I think that's fine. If we could refine those steps in the drafting, like, because you just volunteered yourself.
For this one. just to be
Yeah.
clear.
So then so my bias, at work, we are all virtual. And so we're co-writing in shared documents. Is that what you're envisioning? Or are you envisioning sharing out a document that we would then bring our notes to, or to email you our feedback so you can incorporate them? That's going to be a very lengthy process if you send us and we have thoughts, but we don't share them until the meeting, or you didn't incorporate later.
I agree that you are right from a logistical standpoint of it is more efficient to do it with your method. My concern is that if we have a shared document that we as a body are working on and from in a non-public way, that's a little too close to violation of the Texas Open Meetings Act that I want to steer away from. And so I think that we are going to be handcuffed by the legality of what we can and can't do over efficiency. But you're not wrong.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
So is what you're saying, though, that, because we have the policy drafted, you're saying we talk now about any changes we already see in the policy. Those changes you make to the policy to bring to the next meeting. And then also between this meeting and the next meeting, we all have a chance to look further, because we're not going to all be able to read this.
Yes.
And like Helen saying, like, we need more eyes on it. And also between the meetings, we all have a chance to look at this, and then there'll be a new policy that then we can talk further about after we've all had a chance to review the materials. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. Did that make sense to everyone else?
And the thing too that I would think could be helpful, because these are pretty kind of dense and stuff, and so when I glanced at them briefly, like to just refresh my memory, the things that I thought were not here based on what I kind of saw us living the policy as were loan period. It says in here that it has to be a minimum of 4 weeks. And I don't know I don't honestly know what we're doing with that. I'd have to dig in, but I know it needs to be spelled out here. And then, no fees for the other library, and then the types of materials, if we wanted to put a limit on the types of materials, or maybe we don't. But those are the things that jumped out at me, as like things that I didn't see us living. And then, the other thing to think about that has helped me a lot when I'm drafting policies too is, not drafting policies, editing policies, you know, other libraries, you know, there are other libraries, exemplary other libraries that, you know, you go to their website and just to also like this, it doesn't need to look like this. Like literally, it could be overwhelming. It literally could be just maybe a little longer than this paragraph. You know what I mean? So don't, I know we're all really smart and like don't want to miss anything, but let's not make it like a 9-page. You know what I mean? Like it literally can be, let's not overthink it is my point. You know what I mean? Because I think it also could be that we even have a statement that says something like, in line with the Texas State Library, blah, 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 Commission, we follow all these procedures and specifically these two, you know? Yeah, something that sort of protects us without, like, if we missed a part, we could refer back and say, oh, but.
And I like that idea as well, in that not being so specific of, even if it's like word for word, but this says over here, at some point, these documents could change.
Right.
And not being handcuffed to constantly monitor the site for changes, referencing to saying, we're going to adhere to the requirements that are listed within these other policies, please see them. And that way, if they change, the policy automatically changes as well.
Exactly, and then we're keeping it to our specific, this site specifications, not so worried about everything that's contained in these.
This is not a question of the process, though. I can save it. It's more about the content.
Let's pause for 1 second then just to make sure there aren't any, so we're not having too many divergent topics.
So in terms of next meeting business, maybe we should save that till the end. Should we save that to the end or should we discuss that now as we're talking about process and?
I think that fits with the process still.
Okay.
And so is there no other questions on the process?
So board members will review the related documents and bring any suggestions that they have after review to our next meeting.
Yes. And as part of that, I plan on sending out the draft version as part of like the meeting minutes discussion, or the meeting agenda discussions for March. That way you're not, we have some time prior to the meeting to see what I've drafted up and see how your notes would fit in the context of that policy draft.
Great.
Cool. If no other process questions, Joey, what's your relevant discussion point?
Both of these two documents really kind of talks about the scope and responsibilities, obligations of lending libraries. Is that, I imagine it's rare, but is it something that we've handled where we have been the lending library? And I imagine when it comes to our things, we probably want to have some decisions about what could be and could not be lended, like a microscope, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know how much we want to dive into that much bulkier part of these protocols, but I think it's important to think through. And I think that area probably does need a lot of library staff in your point of view, in your experience in what has been requested or could be requested.
Mm-hmm.
And I think on this topic, and just to confirm, Joy, you're referring to the library of things, right? When you're talking about the things.
I think, yes, how's that?
Because looking at the price limitation set at these other policies where it says you cannot charge more than what is standard shipping rates, there's gonna have to be higher shipping rates for mailing telescopes and other large bulky items that would not, and so as long as it's not prohibited under these other policies, it might be something that is a parameter if that's too much of a risk on library resources, that the library of things is intentionally excluded from this process.
Yeah, I would agree, yeah.
Especially if we only have one, like, of the item, we wouldn't want to take it from our community.
Are the items in the library of things in the OCLC catalog, they're cataloged out?
I think they are, because our catalog syncs with OCLC.
Cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
It is definitely in the purview of the library to limit based on certain purposes, you just gotta make sure.
Mhm.
Did you have any, I had one other question about the policy, but I want to make sure there are questions.
That was a big question.
One question I had was about the language in good standing and whether in good standing is defined somewhere else in another policy.
No, that would definitely need to be fleshed out for sure.
Because I have $1.73
Yeah.
fine right now. I don't know if I'm in good standing.
Yeah.
I don't think he's secretary, if that's the case.
No,
Paying
I
library fees is a great way to support the library right now. It really is.
Yeah, I definitely think that, could be for sure. The other thing that, is interesting that we could look at too is, how long someone would have to be a card holder or a patron before we would lend with ILL. That I believe, but I need to have verification on it. I believe that it's the individual library's discretion to determine that time. It's seen as, from where I've worked in the past, as like a credit, kind of like, you don't want someone to get a card today and then borrow from another library when you haven't even determined if there's someone that brings items back in the first place. So, but I don't know what these policies say about that.
And I'm curious if is there a track record of examples of bad situations that occurred and that you need to mitigate against, like those specific, I don't say individuals, not the right word, but maybe like situations or scenarios that we've been burned in the past, and we want to make sure that we're mitigating that risk in the policy. You may not know that now, but that might be
And
topic for next
I
month.
think it speaks to what Jessica was saying about in good standing, because that is kind of too vague, because it is a little bit too subjective about what could be considered good standing, because someone who had fines but pays them, is that good standing, or does that have to be somebody who never had fines? You know, I mean, I think that's kind of something that should definitely, we can like read up on what it says in here about that, and like what extent to which we could find verbiage or language to describe or specify, like maybe take it out a little bit, or I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Thinking about a way to say it that would take the subjectivity out of it, in terms of, because I'm thinking also of like someone working at the desk who's helping a patron. How do they know what's good standing?
Are there any probationary statuses or probationary periods when a new patron creates a account?
We don't have that, well, we have a restricted card, which is the type where if you only have a Texas license or one form of ID, let's just say, if you only have one form of ID, Texas ID, you get a restricted card. But if you have two forms of ID, you get unrestricted. And that's something that.
This is a fun game we're gonna.
And so I'm wondering if the more efficient way to address that, because I'm sure in good standing is going to have implications for not this policy, but other policies in the future, that we just keep a running list of definitions, and we say at the end of the process, we have a stack of new policies on top of that, and later on top, just for all these policies, these words mean this thing. And that way it's one set of consistent definitions across the board. And we'll just know by the end of the process how long that definition list gets to.
Right. And a part of the in good standing, I know where that comes from, and that is that the library itself is responsible for paying the other library if that material doesn't come back. And so whether or not you collected it from the patron. And so that's kind of why there's that, like, there has to be some parameter of eligibility so that the risk that you're taking is, you know, I guess that's kind of where it stems from.
The two other topics that I want to bring for discussion are price point and any applicable changes to that. We have $2 listed here. Is that because that's what's actually is charged today if I wanted to do a library loan, or is that just a placeholder value?
That is currently what this library charges. And if you look at this Texas one, it says in number 8 in the last page, it says costs. The first number makes you look like you can't charge. And it's like, okay, wait. You can't charge for lending or processing fees. But the second one says you can charge your own patron the actual cost of return postage or this amount that is based on what the USPS library mail rate is. And that's been updated since August. But I do know that we get a reimbursement from the Texas State Library Commission for our ILL postage. And the argument that the staff member who runs our ILL program said that the $2 was implemented because the reimbursement didn't cover the full cost of postage. And honestly, his opinion is he likes the $2 charge because it makes people a little more likely to come pick up their item. Because apparently before there was the $2 charge, they would spend a lot of money, this library, requesting the items, getting the items, and the patron never picking it up. And so then you'd be on the hook for shipping it back, having never had anyone use it. So there is that too. So that's just something to consider from the person who's living it out.
And the thought that I have with the group on that is any changes on that pricing structure affects budgetary concerns of the library. I don't know that it's appropriate for this body to make those determinations. It'd be better for council, who has higher budgetary authorities and everything else. And so figuring out what that balance point is in the context of the overall process of changing policies, that we find a way to thread that needle properly. And then the second set of questions is on that grant that you mentioned that helps to offset some of the fees. I want to make sure that whatever grant terms and conditions you're obligated to follow to maintain good standing in that grant access, that it's included in what we end up at the end of the day.
Not sure. Say it again?
Yeah, so like, are there any requirements of that grant that we have to follow in order to continue to use that grant?
Obviously.
Well, it's really interesting because it's actually the same entity that does it. So it's kind of almost like you just have to follow the procedures. You have to provide them statistics multiple times a year. And then they base it on how many lens and everything. So it's not particularly, it's not a very hard grant to apply for. I think it literally was set up to make interlibrary loan more doable for libraries.
So I have a couple of comments. The first one is that as we're going through the policy, just because of some of the comments that have been made, I think we need to have how public library policies and procedures can be, because some of the things that have been mentioned today are mentioned throughout some of the other policies as well. And so if we're not thinking about this, we may be impacting another policy without, realizing that we're doing that. The other thing to it, and you might have brought this last meeting, so this is called policies and procedures. And so some of them are just policies and it's just a statement, right? And then there's others that is a policy that's more detailed, that starts looking more like procedures. So I think to your point, do you think that it's not part of what we need to define? Are we trying to get the policy, or are we trying to do the policy and the procedure? Or maybe as we're drafting all of this, the more detail that we have, we'll have a better idea. Okay, so if we condense it, this is the policy, and then whatever else doesn't fit into the policy is then given to you to draft the procedure, assuming there's not one that's available. Because I mean, there's a lot of information here, and without reading it, I can kind of see going way into the weeds, right? So, which is, I think, what you're wanting to not.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky, and, there is a difference between policy and procedure, and I think maybe we can even, as we go through it, sort of sparse, I like your idea of like sparsing it out and,
And I think it may be not hard, but possibly challenging the first time around, and then we'll eventually figure it out very quickly. Okay, yeah, that's too much. We need to scale it back and sort of know what those parameters are. It's just a couple of things to think about. But I do think we need to have the policies and procedures available as we're doing the review, just to make sure.
I think every iteration that we do, so like every new policy, we can, it would be great if you could, just like in this situation, you kind of pull together kind of roughly what our policy has been. So any knowledge that you have of what a procedure is roughly, doesn't have to be, again, like multi-page book about it, but I think that can help, because sometimes those procedural steps help us understand what is missing or is too specific in a policy as well. I personally love procedure, that's my bias.
And just, I mean, this type of work is like, kind of granular and kind of hard, but I think it's really valuable to me to have support on this because the way things are going, like as I said before, in the library world, you're only as secure in your practices as your policies are sound. And to me, given the climate we're in right now, I don't feel as comfortable in my role without having policies that are more recently examined because the way that when things come up, if anything comes up or anything like that, it's like people are like, well, what does your policy say? And if your policy is not solid or it's wishy-washy or it's unclear or it hasn't been updated, it leaves the library and the city and myself really open for vulnerable, really vulnerable. So I know I really appreciate you guys helping me with this because it's a lot, and I know it's your job. So, but it's not the most fun work, but it's important.
So recognizing the time, we have something to tackle to this evening. Is there any other comments on this one before we move on?
I just wondered if anyone had any comments to help inform the loan periods section that Colleen pointed out, and also the limits section. So those are areas that she really wanted us to help flesh out what we have any comments on.
What I will do is I believe, Colleen, you wanted to talk to staff about what is actually in practice right now. I will leave that section of the policy pretty open-ended, that way we can plug and play whatever feedback we get.
Sounds good.
And so just to make it easier for us from Open Meetings Act, I would entertain a motion to table this policy until next meeting. There's a motion from Mary, second from Joy, all in favor, opposed, and table this till next meeting. Now, Jessica, I know we've hopped around everywhere. Do you feel comfortable with your notes for items 1 and 2 of new business and 1 of continued business?
I have done my best to capture what has been an extremely detailed conversation without creating a document that's not helpful to anyone in terms of its depth. And we'll rely on the video recording if there are any like specifics that we need to return to as a group.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you for your hard work here. So moving on to continued business, item 2, update and discussion on library board training resources. Morgan, I know that this might be a topic that you have some thoughts on. Excuse me. You want to share?
Succinctly, one thought I had was in a welcome document for new POA members going forward. And in that welcome document, you would list if they want to do the training that Colleen had given us from the library to familiarize ourselves. We know that there's city training that we have to accomplish, things that people would need to know and where they can go to look to be prepared when they come to the meeting. I can volunteer to do a mock-up, and then you can review it and see what you think, and if you want to add or take away.
And my silence to me thinking of topics to add on to this. So give me 1 second, I'll give you some more ideas here.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, if I'm understanding the packet properly, is that it would be kind of a welcome to the team. You obviously have to accomplish the required city trainings and do your sweat turning in, all that kind of stuff. But then here's also the training resources, which is that link that Colleen sent previously. Copies of the long-term plan that we have for the library. I would imagine that the future approved policies that we're picking now will be part of that package. Did I miss anything from what you were telling? Is that in line with what you're thinking?
Yes, so when somebody joins the board, we know exactly what's going on, we know what they need to review on their own, and they can just sit the board learning rather than, what are we doing?
I think Kara tried, because she did have a number of things in her first email to us, but it was not all of it. So I love this idea.
I could give you one, my binder,
Okay.
if that helps, because it does have a comprehensive plan in here. We have the policies and procedures, the mission statement and code of conduct. We have the public library advisory boards, and most of the information that you sent us. I have it tagged. I have our job description. I have all these things that I think may be beneficial if we have a new member to say. If you
So
like.
I think she's mocking up with the list of email. That goes in an email or like an entire template.
I was kind of looking at an initial 2-pager because some of these documents are stored somewhere that we can point to.
That is true.
I know that when Colleen sent the big PDF with all of the documents combined, we could do something like that. But on the 2-page, it's just a summary of, these are all the things that would help you
Got it, go look for
participate
them.
on this board. and we're glad to have you and welcome aboard and nice things and
And even maybe a list of other board members too, or, I don't know.
current board members.
Could
We
you
can
speak
see
to
the
that?
checklist,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the checklist,
Yeah.
right.
We could do that, but that kind of dates the document, so as people change, then that document has to be constantly updated, which could be done, but we could point a link to where the new members
Right.
appear on the website to keep the document lasting longer before updates. So it's not so frequent, because then somebody would have to do more frequent updates, and this would sort of lengthen that time.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
And Morgan's a really good, great writer. So I'm so excited about this.
Like a very warm onboarding.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, and then we can do the PDF, and we can point to where they're located, whatever we decide.
Yeah, excellent, yeah.
Perfect.
When do you want this? Should we set that time?
How quickly do you think it's reasonable for you?
Next meeting?
Okay, done, sold.
I love this.
Any other topics on the library board training resources? Hearing none, Colleen, first report.
Okay, so, hot off the press, very exciting news. We yesterday received the award, the announcement that we won the award for Texas Municipal Library Directors Association. So we applied for this award, and it was quite an involved process. Apparently, this, I think, is our 7th year of getting this award. And it is a very in-depth application process of having to provide this organization with all the programs and all the different stats that we've done over the course of the year. And we actually did it under very difficult circumstances this time, because we didn't have a director, and our assistant director was out sick, and I hadn't started when they started working on it. And so our staff put this together with Kara's giving them direction. And all I did was proofread it at the end, and because there's a narrative part, and then there's all this documentation. We have to show proof of all the different programs and different, there's all different criteria. I think there's 10 different criteria that they want us to look, that we're reaching all different constituents in the community and all that. And so the one part that I did get to add that I thought was a little added value was the staff, are used to the programs they do, because they do them and they do them so well. And usually when it's your own program, you don't think it's as awesome as it really is, because you're used to it, you see it every day. So as a new director who had eyes on it for the first time, I was able to say, oh my gosh, we should add this, we should add that. And so I was able to, add in a few more pictures and a few more statements of some unique things that we do that was like, oh, they definitely need to know we did that. So we found out yesterday that we got it again. So yay, I was very, very happy and proud of the work that our staff does. So that is a big deal. And I guess there's some plaque and things we get. And I guess if you are interested, Jerry wanted us to come and be honored at the next city council meeting for this award. He wanted me to bring the staff. So if you guys want to come at all to the next city council meeting and cheer on the staff, that is, I think our next city council meeting is the, let's see, this one was the 7th, so 21st, I believe. 21st. So, yeah. So that's one big thing. I was also going to tell you about the Catherine Ann Porter author series going on. And all month long, we're having, I did share statistics with you for January. All month long, we're having Black History Month's story times. We're having guest readers come on Saturdays. And that's in partnership with the Arts and Cultural Commission. And it's for families and kids of all ages. In March, we are going to have, March 25th, we're going to have the inauguration or the unveiling of our seed library, which one of our library assistants has been doing a lot of research preparing for a seed library that we're going to have that a lot of libraries have been doing. And it's basically like like almost like a little free library with seeds. Take some seeds, leave some seeds, and really building like community gardening and that kind of thing. So we're going to do a kickoff on March 25th, and then we're also going to do something again for Earth Day on the 22nd of April, but the kickoff will be on the 25th. We're also gearing up to have a big book sale on May 5th. We're doing a lot of weeding, and we're going to put out a call for donations too, so that we can have a bigger book sale. We did have our active shooter praise training recently, and that went very well. I'm working with the KPD to go through the library with me and make sure that there's some things that we can do for security and just added things. I'm also working on having a all staff professional development day where we close the library, and it's going to be either, I don't have the date solid yet. It's going to be National Library Week. We're celebrating library workers that day, and we're going to have a necessary training on the first part of the day, which is CPR and AED, and then we're going to have, I think I'll have a luncheon or something for them for this award, and then we'll do some other professional development in the afternoon. I haven't figured out what that's going to be yet, but I recently went to a leadership training, and it's really just brought to my attention how important it is for all staff to have professional development and how empowering it is. So it's really tricky because we're open to the public, and so Human Resources told me that I could close the library for a day to give professional development to everyone, and so I'm looking forward to that. I haven't told the staff yet about the date, but I'm excited about that. And then I think the last thing I wanted to tell you about, I mean, we're working on preparing our summer reading program. Our theme is, it's a mystery theme this year. And I did want to give you an update on the friends were going to buy us a new refrigerator. And they did buy us a new popcorn machine, and it was fabulous, but we're very grateful. But the refrigerator, staff had said, we'd love a new refrigerator that has water and ice in it. Okay, well, I said, well, I found out we didn't have a water line. And so we got a water line hooked up, and then I discovered that the fridge that we had already had water and ice. It just hadn't ever been hooked up to water. So I was like, this fridge isn't very old. I don't think we need a new refrigerator. So I didn't want to upset anybody who really wanted a new refrigerator. So I took a poll. I said, let's vote. This is going to be democratic. And so far, there's not enough people that think we need a new refrigerator. So I am going to, the friends have agreed to do something else instead, which is going to be a fancy coffee machine instead for the refrigerator. So I couldn't stomach the amount for the refrigerator when I found out it was, even though they were being so generous, I said, let's try this one first. Let's get a new filter in here and let's try it, and it's fine. So anyway, that's it for me.
Next, we got the Franklin Library report.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to report, and we're gonna buy a coffee maker. No, I knew that, but we do have a little bit of news on the thrift shop. The manager will be retiring in a few weeks. So we went ahead and interviewed some candidates, and we've selected someone, but we're still researching what the salary offer should be. But this person will be able to start before the existing manager leaves, so there, it won't be left in the lurch. So we think it's all going to work out. Just get it all, the final details worked out. But that's all that I was asked to report tonight. So thank you.
don't know what the dynamic is between the board and the Friends, but I didn't know if it might be possible to consider if there's something that might be done to celebrate the library's winning of the award. I don't know what the dynamic is, or if that's a, okay.
That brings us down to announcements, informational items, and the next meeting. If there's no other items to discuss, no other comments to be made, it is 8:01. Now we entertain a motion to adjourn. There's a motion from Ms. Mary. Is there a second? Second from Morgan. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you all. We'll meet again on March 9th.
And February 21st.
February 21st, let me just double check.
I'm just checking.
It is
I just
Tuesday.
wanted to make sure that it's on their calendar.
Yes, and what I'm gonna do is, I go to, department head meetings on Monday mornings, and that's when we, say what's gonna be on the agenda for the next city council. And if it changes at all, I will let you guys know. But, I sent it to Jerry and Amber yesterday when we got it, and they were like, you have to have everybody come to the city council meeting and be celebrated, so.
Absolutely.
I was like, okay, so unless something changes, I'll let you know. If you don't hear from me, it's that day. Remember.
I think that's great.
Thank you for saying the recording, just to make sure.
Yes.
Is there a secret to, dissecting the policy? Is that how you just do it?
Now, I disagree, but are you usually